What I'm about to tell you sounds impossible. But every word is true. March 15, 2020. 3:47 a.m. A man sits alone in his £2 million Kent mansion, typing what he believes is the most secure message in the world. His fingers tap out instructions to burn £300,000 worth of bananas. But at that exact moment, 200 miles away in London, a police officer is reading those same words in real time. The man typing has no idea his unbreakable encryption has been shattered. He has no idea that every message he's ever sent is now evidence. And he has absolutely no idea that hidden inside those banana shipments he's ordering burned is enough pure cocaine to kill everyone in this room. His name is Matthew Byrne. His EncroChat handle, Slick Valley. And in the next few minutes, you're going to watch his £190 million criminal empire crumble, one intercepted message at a time. Because what happened next didn't just destroy Britain's most sophisticated drug network. It exposed prison break plots, military-grade weapons trafficking, and a money laundering scheme so clever it was hidden inside London's most exclusive jewelry district. This is the true story of how the criminals' greatest weapon became their ultimate betrayal. And the first domino? That single message about burning bananas. A message that was never supposed to be read by anyone except the man who received it. June 2020. Hidden data centers across Europe. Government hackers are working frantically to decode what they are calling the holy grail of criminal intelligence. They've just cracked EncroChat, the Fort Knox of criminal communications. And what they're reading is making their blood run cold. Real-time murder plots. Drug shipments worth hundreds of millions. Hit lists. Torture instructions. The raw, unfiltered conversations of Europe's most dangerous criminals. EncroChat wasn't just a messaging app, it was the nervous system of organized crime. £1,500 for a phone. £350 monthly subscription. No cameras. No GPS military-grade encryption that governments supposedly couldn't crack. But here's the thing that should terrify you. 60,000 criminals worldwide were using these phones. In Britain alone, 10,000 active accounts. 10,000 people so dangerous they needed military-grade security just to send a text message. And every single conversation was about to be exposed. Among those 10,000 was a man who called himself Slick Valley. By day, Matthew Byrne looked like any other wealthy businessman in Kent. Designer suits. Luxury cars. Expensive house. By night, he was orchestrating one of the largest cocaine trafficking operations in European history. His partner, Scout Cleaner, real name Bo Devlin, was the muscle behind the operation. East London born, ice in his veins, and absolutely ruthless when it came to protecting their empire. Together, they had built something that law enforcement had never seen before. But they were about to make a fatal mistake. Because while they thought they were invisible, every single message they sent was being recorded, analyzed, and prepared for use against them in court. The question isn't whether they would be caught. The question is, just how deep did their criminal empire go? Colombia. 2019. A plantation worker loads the last crate of bananas onto a shipping container bound for Europe. But hidden beneath the fruit are 50 kilograms of pure cocaine. The worker has no idea he's just become an accessory to murder. Because every gram of that cocaine represents violence. Torture. Death. The Colombian cartels don't negotiate, they eliminate problems. And Matthew Byrne was about to become their biggest customer. Police intercepts reveal the true scale of Byrne's operation. Between March and June 2020, just 4 months, he attempted to import 5 tons of cocaine. 5 tons. That's enough to supply every drug dealer in London for 6 months. Street value? £190 million. But that's just 4 months of work. The encrypted messages tell a darker story. For 8 years, Byrne and Devlin had been smuggling between 5 and 10 tons annually. That's potentially 80 tons over 8 years. 80 tons of pure cocaine flooding British streets. But here's where it gets truly sinister. To avoid detection, they weren't just smuggling drugs, they were playing mind games with law enforcement. £300,000 worth of bananas. Real bananas. Shipped from South America to Europe. Just to be burned in industrial incinerators. Why? Because every time customs found a legitimate banana shipment from Byrne's companies, they became less suspicious of future shipments. In one chilling message, Byrne told Devlin, "Burn all the banana pallets from the dummy run. We can't sell them legitimately." £300,000. Just for psychological warfare against law enforcement. And when the real shipments came through, the profits were staggering. One recovered message shows Byrne paying £3 million for a single 600-kilogram cocaine shipment. The markup in Britain? Over 300%. But moving that kind of product requires serious infrastructure. Byrne had lorry drivers on his payroll earning £50,000 per trip, more than most people make in a year, for a single journey. Yet he refused to pay for their diesel fuel. Think about that level of arrogance. Of control. Of absolute certainty that he was untouchable. And that's when Byrne made his most dangerous decision. Cocaine was making him rich. But if he really wanted power, he needed weapons. Military-grade weapons. The kind that turned drug dealers into warlords. And that decision was about to make him the target of every law enforcement agency in Europe. Mach 11 submachine gun. 1,200 rounds per minute. Effective range, 50 meters. Used by special forces worldwide. In the wrong hands? A weapon of mass murder. And Matthew Byrne was collecting them like trophies. July 2020. Encrypted message from Slick Valley to his weapons contact. Need the inspection done by the Boxer before I commit to the purchase. The Boxer is a professional weapons inspector who certified military-grade firearms for Britain's criminal elite. This wasn't some back-alley gun deal. This was a sophisticated weapons trafficking operation with quality control procedures. Byrne's main supplier was Jody Hall, EncroChat handle unbeatable. Hall specialized in what police call conflict-grade weapons, guns designed to kill multiple targets in seconds. But Hall made one fatal mistake. July 15, 2020. North London. Hall arrived at a predetermined location to collect a firearm Byrne was selling to another criminal. Police were waiting. The arrest was clean. Professional. Hall was in custody within minutes. Most criminals would panic. Cut ties. Disappear. Not Matthew Byrne. Within hours of Hall's arrest, Byrne was typing a message that would shock even hardened police investigators. "I'm going to see if you want us to get him of the van, mate. I've a few bods who will do it and done it before." A prison van breakout. In broad daylight. In 2020. And the most terrifying part? Done it before. This wasn't desperate talk. Byrne had access to people who had successfully attacked police convoys in the past. Think about what this means. We're not talking about drug dealers. We're talking about a criminal organization with the capability to conduct armed attacks on law enforcement. Domestic terrorism disguised as organized crime. Picture the scene: armed men blocking a police convoy. Smoke grenades. Automatic weapons. A precision military operation to free one man from custody. In Britain. In 2020. Fortunately, Hall was sentenced before any rescue attempt could be made. But the very fact that Byrne was casually planning what amounts to a war against the state tells you everything about his level of power. And his level of arrogance. Because while Byrne was planning prison breaks and collecting weapons of war, he was also running an operation so sophisticated that it fooled some of London's most exclusive financial institutions. An operation that turned dirty drug money into gleaming gold bars. Right in the heart of London's Diamond District. And the man who made it possible? He was hiding in plain sight. Hatton Garden, London. 8:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Businessmen in expensive suits hurry past shop windows displaying millions of pounds worth of diamonds and gold. One of them is carrying a briefcase containing £500,000 in cash. Drug money. Weapons money. Money soaked in blood. His destination? a respectable jewelry shop owned by a man named Chris O'Shea. But O'Shea isn't just a jeweler. He's a financial alchemist, transforming the dirtiest money in Britain into gleaming, untraceable gold. Here's how the operation worked. Byrne would arrive with hundreds of thousands in cash, money that could be traced to drug deals, weapons sales, and violence across London. O'Shea would make it disappear. In its place, gold bars worth £40,000 each. Clean money with no criminal history. Designer watches worth more than luxury cars. And for this service, O'Shea charged just 3% commission. Let me put that in perspective. When Devlin requested £100,000 in clean £20 notes, O'Shea's cut was £3,000. For one transaction. That probably took less than 20 minutes. But the gold was the true genius of this scheme. Gold has no serial numbers. No transaction history. It can be melted down, reformed, sold anywhere in the world. The perfect criminal currency. And Byrne was buying it by the truckload. 10 to 15 bars per visit. That's between £400,000 and £600,000 worth of precious metal, converted from drug money in a single afternoon. But here's what shows you just how paranoid these criminals had become. Byrne never handled the transportation himself. Instead, he used Devlin as a courier, creating layers of separation between himself and the evidence. Professional, careful, sophisticated. And it worked perfectly for years. Millions of pounds laundered through one of London's most prestigious districts. Right under the noses of financial regulators. Until June 13, 2020. The day everything changed. Thousands of miles away, in a secure facility in France, government hackers achieved what many thought was impossible. They cracked EncroChat's encryption. Suddenly, police weren't just investigating crimes after they happened, they were reading criminal plans in real time. Every message Byrne had ever sent. Every transaction with O'Shea. Every weapons deal. Every prison break plot. All of it captured in digital evidence that couldn't be denied, couldn't be explained away, and couldn't be destroyed. 4 months, Byrne and Devlin continued their operations, completely unaware that their every move was being monitored by the very people hunting them. They thought they were invisible. They were wrong. And that brings us to the morning when their world exploded. October 2020. 5:47 a.m. Simultaneous raids across London and Kent. This isn't just an arrest, it's a declaration of war against organized crime. Operation Venetic. The largest law enforcement operation in British history. At Matthew Byrne's £2 million mansion in Sevenoaks, armed officers storm through the front entrance. What they find inside is the lifestyle of a criminal emperor. £20,000 in cash. Just sitting in a bedside drawer like loose change. Designer clothing worth more than most people's houses. A brand new Jaguar in the driveway. And the smoking gun that would destroy him, an EncroChat phone containing thousands of incriminating messages. But Byrne was too smart to keep everything in one place. At his girlfriend's house, officers had to blast through a reinforced security door, the kind you install when you have serious enemies who want you dead. Inside? Property brochures for Portuguese villas. Byrne wasn't just living the high life, he was planning his escape route. At his parents' home, they found something that directly linked him to Devlin. Correspondence in Devlin's name, hidden alongside a taser. This wasn't just about money, it was about maintaining a criminal network even within his own family. Transition to Devlin. Meanwhile, at Devlin's Sevenoaks address, officers discovered the tools of a professional criminal. CS spray for personal defense, surveillance detection equipment showing he knew he might be watched, and £5,000 in cash. But it was the luxury items that really told the story. Designer shoes, clothing, jewelry. These weren't desperate street dealers, these were successful criminals who had been living like kings. Here's what makes this case absolutely extraordinary. When police analyzed the EncroChat messages, they realized they hadn't just caught drug dealers. They had captured evidence of a complete criminal empire. 5 tons of cocaine trafficking. 8 years of international smuggling. Military-grade weapons dealing. prison break conspiracies, money laundering through precious metals, corruption of legitimate businesses. This wasn't a drug bust. This was the takedown of what amounted to a criminal multinational corporation. But here's the most stunning part. Byrne and Devlin's operation was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Operation Venetic results across the entire UK, 746 arrests. Over £100 million in drugs seized. 77 firearms confiscated. Multiple organized crime groups completely destroyed. The EncroChat takedown had revealed something terrifying. The true scale of organized crime in modern Britain was far worse than anyone had imagined. But even facing this mountain of evidence, even knowing that police had read every message they'd ever sent, Byrne and Devlin still had one last card to play. And what they did next would surprise everyone. January 9, 2025. Maidstone Crown Court. The moment of truth. Matthew Byrne and Bo Devlin, the architects of a £190 million criminal empire, stand before the judge. The evidence against them is overwhelming. Thousands of their own messages, financial records, physical evidence, witness testimony. Their response? Guilty. On all charges. When the prosecution can present your own words describing your own crimes in minute detail, there isn't much room for legal strategy. 2 months later. March 7, 2025. Sentencing day. The courtroom is packed. Victims' families. Law enforcement officers. Journalists. Everyone wants to see justice delivered. Matthew Byrne, 21.5 years in prison. Bo Devlin, 17 years in prison. But they weren't alone in their fall. Chris O'Shea, the Hatton Garden money launderer, 11 years. Jody Hall, the weapons dealer, 12 years. Combined prison time for this single criminal network, over 60 years. But here's what those numbers really represent. Andrew Tickner, the NCA operations manager who led this investigation, said something that should haunt us all. They were responsible for flooding the UK's streets with enormous quantities of cocaine. Enormous quantities. For 8 years. Think about the thousands of lives destroyed by the drugs these men imported. The families torn apart. The communities devastated. The violence that follows the drug trade wherever it spreads. Those Mach 11 submachine guns Byrne was trafficking, they weren't going to collectors. They were destined for gang wars, armed robberies, assassinations. The violence those weapons would have unleashed is terrifying to contemplate. But this case represents something bigger than just the fall of one criminal organization. It represents the dawn of a new era in law enforcement. Operation Venetic didn't just catch criminals after they committed crimes. It gave police the power to read their minds, to see their plans, to understand how modern organized crime really operates. The result? The biggest law enforcement victory in UK history. Criminal networks that had operated in the shadows for decades, suddenly exposed to the light. Yet even as we celebrate this victory, we must remember, this is just one battle in an ongoing war. New criminal networks are forming right now, using new technologies, developing new methods, staying one step ahead. The arms race between criminals and law enforcement never ends. But the Byrne-Devlin case proves something crucial. No matter how sophisticated the criminals, no matter how advanced their technology, no matter how carefully they plan, eventually, everyone makes a mistake. Sometimes, that mistake is trusting the wrong technology. Sometimes it's getting too greedy. Sometimes it's simply sending the wrong message to the wrong person at the wrong time. And when that moment comes, justice will be waiting. The encrypted phones that Matthew Byrne and Bo Devlin believed would protect them forever became the instruments of their destruction. Their own words, captured in digital amber, became the witnesses that testified against them. In the end, the technology they trusted with their lives became the evidence that took their freedom away. This is the reality of crime in the digital age, a relentless arms race between criminal innovation and justice. And here at Crime Scene Chronicles, we don't just tell you what happened. We show you how it happened, why it happened, and what it means for the future. If you're as fascinated by these modern criminal masterminds as I am, you need to see what we're covering next week. A case so twisted, so technologically sophisticated, that it makes the Burn Devlin operation look like amateur hour. I'm talking about hackers who stole £500 million in cryptocurrency using nothing but social engineering and a single phone call. The subscribe button is right there. Trust me, you don't want to miss that story. Until then, remember this. In the digital age, your secrets are only as safe as the weakest link in your chain of trust. And as Matthew Byrne and Bo Devlin learned in the most devastating way possible,